Trustee O'Brien? Board meeting of Halton Catholic District School Board on Wednesday, August 19th. This is a continuation of the August 18th specially called meeting. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube and will be posted later on the board's YouTube channel. Trustees, be reminded to turn your microphone and camera on your devices until you are recognized to speak. In order to be recognized to speak, please type hand up in the chat box. Once you have been recognized, turn on your microphone and camera. Opening exercise. Trustee Gruber, can you please lead us in the opening exercise?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you could all join me in the sign of our faith. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Lord, we are meeting today to conduct matters of business. Guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being our source of guidance today. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Holy Spirit, amen.
Please rise for the stand, the national anthem.
Oh my God. We'll skip agenda item 1.2, 1.3. We'll move on to approval of the agenda. Given that we are continuing items from last evening, can the board agree to move action items 8? Sorry.
Mr. Chair, I just have a point of clarification. Are you at the point of asking for approval of the agenda? I would just like a point of clarification on this meeting. Fortunately, there are a lot of us there, but bylaw 4.23 does say we need 24 hours notice to have a meeting of this. So, and I'd like a point of clarification on today's meeting.
So there is wording in our bylaws that says where feasible. It's still the board's decision. That is, we as a board vote to either continue on or not continue on. So if you have a point of order and you wish to enforce 4.23, then I can take it to a vote and we can deal with it in that manner.
No, Mr. Chair, I was concerned that many of us wouldn't be able to attend, but unfortunately, we're just only missing Trustee O'Hearn, Cernata.
All right.
I'm not going to call a point of order. Thank you.
All right, so then we will continue on. Can I have a motion to amend? Trustee Guzzo, did you wish to address this?
No, thank you through you, Mr. Chair. You addressed the point of clarification I was going to raise, which was that it says where feasible.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So may I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended from last night? Since we're not going through the whole agenda, we're only going to be finishing up Secretary Daly's presentation, after which we'll be moving to a response to the delegation. And subsequent to that, we will be moving on to agenda item 8.2, and that is Trustee DeRosa's motion, which was given and seconded, moved by him and seconded by Trustee Murphy. Is everybody okay with that? So that's the changes to our agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I move.
All right, moved by Trustee DeRosa.
I'll second it, Agnew.
Seconded by Trustee Agnew. All right, I will take a recorded vote. All right, Trustee Intomasi's in favor. Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee O'Hearn-Zernata is absent. Trustee Agnew?
Favor.
Trustee Guzzo?
In favor.
Trustee Dort?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
Trustee DeRosa?
In favor.
Do we know if student trustee Roshdi is here now?
I've tried contacting them, but there's no, they haven't gone back to me.
All right, so he's absent. Trustee Kelly?
Her as well.
All right, thank you, Trustee Gerber, but you're here. So
Yes.
Are you in favor?
In favor, yeah.
Very good. So as I said, we are moving on to the completion of agenda item 9.1, which was put in front of 8.1. Return to school planning. Secretary Daly, can you please give your closing comments?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Trustees will recall at our last meeting that updates were provided to our return to school planning, both at the school level, and then senior staff were directed to investigate the costs associated with reducing class sizes at the elementary level to as close to 25 as possible. That's in item number 9.1, and I think at the last meeting we had left off with questions, or we were taking questions on item 9.1. So I'm happy to continue to respond to any questions if there are any more.
I believe we have Trustee Agnew on queue. So Trustee Agnew, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Director Daly, I just have a question with respect to Rotary. I guess in any of the models, but it's pertinent to the discussion. How is Rotary being handled at the elementary level for those grades 7s and 8s who would typically be moving classroom to classroom? Is the idea to have the teacher move as opposed to the students moving? I'm just wondering if you could clarify that.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so for the schools that do have a Rotary model, typically, as you said, in the intermediate division, teachers would move to the class as opposed to students moving to the teacher.
Do you have a follow-up, Trustee Agnew?
I don't. I'll go back in the queue because I have a question unrelated. Thank you very much.
All right. Trustee Guzzo, you have the floor.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. This will be to Director Daly. Or maybe somebody on the logistics committee, have we looked at how we're going to try to assist those students in JK to grade 3 should they choose to wear masks? Have we thought about an approach or education on that piece?
Director Daly?
Thank you, and through Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask Superintendent Ballo to talk a little bit about the preparations that we're doing for all our students, but specifically to our younger students in terms of wearing of masks and other safety protocols.
Superintendent Ballo, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone, and through you, Mr. Chair. There will be quite a bit of work done with all students around hand hygiene etiquette, respite as etiquette, wearing masks. We have a number of resources that will be shared shortly with parents as well, so that some of the practicing and some of the good advice that's come from public health can be done in advance of the school year. And we have resources that school staff will be using with students to ensure that they're using masks appropriately. Education is a very important piece, especially with mask wearing.
Trustee Guzzo, do you have a supplementary?
I do, but I need a minute, so I'll go back.
You want to go back in queue? All right, so Trustee Agnew, you have the floor again.
Great, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering, there's been a lot of confusion amongst parents and students alike, and obviously with all the information that's flowing back and forth with all the different boards and what they're doing and what the ministry keeps updating us with. I'm wondering if somebody, whether it's yourself, Director Daly, or somebody on staff, can clarify the requirement of 50% of instruction that is being constantly referenced. I think people are confused. Is it 50% instructional time? Is it 50% in the classroom? Would you be able to clarify that 50% situation for everybody?
Secretary Daly?
Thank you, and through Mr. Chair, I hope this is clarifying, but I'm not convinced. We did receive a memo yesterday afternoon from the minister, went to chairs, directors of education, and I'll quote directly from it. To clarify, in the Guide to Reopening Ontario Schools, adapted delivery schedules require in-person attendance for at least 50% of instructional days, example, alternating days. To maintain cohorting and contact limits, the instructional day may be a combination of in-person and synchronous learning.
Do you have a follow-up?
I do, yeah. So just for clarification, so thank you for that. So the synchronous learning that students would be participating in at home would contribute to that 50% requirement, if I'm understanding that correctly.
The synchronous learning that, through you, Mr. Chair, the synchronous learning, either asynchronous or synchronous learning that students would participate in would contribute to the total number of instructional minutes that they're working on, yes.
Okay, so we would have no reason to think then that the ministry would not approve the model that we've put forward, having our secondary students attending schools attending in school only a few days a week.
I don't believe so,
Okay.
and I think I mentioned yesterday that over the last couple of days we've been all boards have been back and forth quite a bit with the ministry, including us. So there's a couple of clarifying questions going back and forth, but certainly the amount of time that our students will be in school is very similar to literally dozens of other boards in the province who have received the final sign off. So at this point, I'm confident that we'll be meeting that requirement.
Okay, thank you, Director Daly.
Trustee Guzzo?
Chair Inchmasi, I'm going to yield to allow the other trustees who haven't spoken yet to go ahead, and then I can follow after Trustee DeRosa.
Okay, so it's after Trustee Murphy. So oh yeah, you're right. So thanks for catching that. Vice Chair Dort, you have the floor.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we talked about this item before. That's releasing the high school student schedule before the letter to ask parents to choose in-person class on.
Did you want to repeat that, Vice Chair Dort? You cut out. Vice Chair Dort, you're muted.
Sorry. Okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we talked about releasing the high school student schedule before the letter to parent to choose the in-person class online. We talked about it some time back. I wanted to know when is this going to be done? Because some courses are really difficult to take online in person, and parents would like to have the choice to choose based on the kids' schedule. So, Secretary Daly, could you let us know that?
Secretary Daly, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. So I think what Vice Chair Dward is asking is when will students actually get their timetable to know which period they're studying certain courses? Thank you. That information it'll really be closer to the actual start of the school year. One of the reasons for that is even though timetables are set, we set them in June, at least our initial timetable. Over the course of the summer, sometimes we have to reschedule based on increased staffing needs or LTOs. So it'll be closer to the actual start of school. So yeah, but I can't give you a specific date. Typically, it's literally the weekend before we come back to school. So right now, we haven't been able to move that date up yet.
Vice Chair Dort, you have either a supplementary or a point of clarification.
If this point of clarification there, Secretary Daly, is it possible is that the best that we can do? Can we give parents more time for making their plans?
I think we do need to get information from parents as soon as we can regarding their intention of whether their students will attend face-to-face or online. I'd love to be able to give parents every piece of information that how things will look September 8th, but there are still going to be some unknowns. But our intention is to start the process of surveying parents today.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I have a supplementary?
Maybe.
Okay,
yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I don't ask too many questions, but so a question here again to Secretary Daly for the planning time for teachers. I know that they visit.
Vice Chair Dort, you keep muting yourself. You're picking up Trustee DeRosa's habit.
I don't know what's happening to my computer this morning. It's just shutting me down. But okay, Mr. Chair, I'm asking the question again. Planning time for teachers. I know that they visit multiple classrooms. So Secretary Daly can tell us what's the plan for planning teachers. Will they still be visiting classrooms? Are we going to restrict the number of teachers? What's the plan for that?
Secretary Daly, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. So on preparation and planning time, a teacher would only visit another classroom typically if they were filling in for an absent teacher, so doing an on-call, not unlike an occasional teacher who would be filling in for somebody who's sick for the day. Some teachers may need to go into other classrooms in order to supervise if a teacher's away. In that case, just like an elementary arts teacher who may be going into several classes, that teacher will maintain physical distancing as best they can. They'll have a mask on, they'll practice good hand hygiene, and all of those other mitigating sort of things that we're taking into account to help everybody stay safe.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Director Daly. A parent has asked me to clarify with regards to secondary synchronous learning that basically cohort A, B, and C will be receiving the same lesson at the same time during that synchronous period.
Secretary Daly, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. All three cohorts will have access to that classroom, and it might be a large group or small group, or they might pull a few kids to meet with online individually or to check in, but yes, that'll be the case.
Supplementary, Trustee Murphy, or a point of clarification?
Yes, I'd like to ask a supplementary to Director Daly.
Go ahead.
I think trustees and parents and ratepayers who are on the line would just like an understanding of the when the survey will be sent out and what are the impacts of any possible action items that come out of today or new motions in delaying that process.
Secretary Daly.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. To be quite honest, Trustee Murphy, we really don't have an intention of delaying the survey going out today. The survey is going to go out. I guess if there's any other additional information that can help inform parents, they will have a week to help that make their decision. Essentially, what we're asking from parents is to indicate whether or not their children will be returning in a face-to-face model or a remote model. And for lots of reasons, we really can't delay starting to gather that information any longer.
Do you need a point of clarification, Trustee Murphy?
No, thank you very much.
All right, Trustee DeRosa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Director Daly. Simple question for everybody's benefit and primarily for mine. Would you clarify where the government's clear directive sits right now with respect to return to school at the elementary level?
Secretary Daly, or do you want to pass that out to?
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. So the direction that we received from the government on July 30th was that students at the elementary level could return to a full conventional day or have the option of remote learning.
You have either a point of clarification or a supplementary, Trustee DeRosa.
No, that was sufficient. Thank you.
All right, Trustee Guzzo, you have the floor again.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to send something over right now to Director Daly and to Rosie DiPietro, if I can ask that they post it. Sorry, I did have it a second ago and now I don't know where it went.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Okay, but you need to give me the point of order, right?
Okay, well, point of order is to try to make a comment to that.
All right, so if you want to make a comment, what she's looking for.
Mr. Chair, I have the floor. I have the floor, and unless he has a point of order, he has to state his point of order, not a comment.
I've asked that already, Trustee Guzzo. Thank you.
I would suggest that if she is given the opportunity to do that, that the opportunity be given to other trustees as well to do the same thing.
Thank you.
Simultaneously.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
So, you know what, Mr. Chair, forget it. I'll just read it out loud and people can write it down. I was going to share what I was going to do it so she could share the screen so that our ratepayers at home can actually see what I'm doing. So I'd like to put a motion forward, whereas student safety is paramount in the return to school planning, whereas distancing challenges may arise, whereas we want to be consistent with messaging we send out to students regarding masking, and whereas students are required to wear masking in any other public forums within the region of Halton, and whereas consistency for students is key in the success of re-entry, be it resolved that all students, in brackets JK to 12, be required to wear non-medical masks, face coverings with the exception of students with exemptions.
Trustee Guzzo, just a point of clarification, or actually, clarification. You said that you were sending information. You didn't give us notice that you were putting forward a motion. So you're
No.
going to have to,
So I would like to do the
excuse
same
me,
thing simultaneously, please.
excuse me. So Trustee Guzzo, can you just please repeat by opening your statement by saying you're putting forward a motion?
Mr. Intomasi, I said I was going to send over something so that she could post it so everybody could see it, and then I went into my motion. Unfortunately, I was interrupted for something that wasn't a point of order.
All right, so let's just leave it as it is.
Frustrated.
Chair.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
Agnew.
Mr. Chair.
So hang on a second. So we have a seconder, moved by Trustee Guzzo, seconded by Trustee Agnew. We need to have that motion read. So could you please reread it so that,
Mr. Chair, I have an objection, Mr. Chair, and this is
all right, but you got to give me a point of order, and you got to give me specifically what it.
Mr. Chair,
It is important which motion gets on the floor first, and I would suggest, Mr. Chair, that you take this back to the order that we have, to the discussion that was ensuing without hijacking that process for the purpose of putting a motion forward ahead of time.
Mr. Chair,
So,
point of order.
clearly-
So hang on a second. So hang on a second. Trustee DeRosa, we have a point of order. It has to be recognized. Trustee Agnew, you have the floor. What is your point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My point of order is that the motion is germane to the conversation, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, we have
know, but you're not
motion on
giving
the
me-
table that has to be dealt with before anything else happens. So what takes priority is the motion on the table that needs to be reread, needs to be reconsidered, and then proper process.
point of order, Mr. Chair. I'd like to be recognized for my point of order without being interrupted. Mr. Chair? Hello?
Yes?
I'd
Can
like
you hear me?
not be interrupted, yes. We aren't on any action items at this point. We are still on reports. So when a motion, as per our bylaws, when a motion is put on the table, which is germane to the conversation, under 10.1 where it's been moved and seconded, it needs now to be entered into debate, and it cannot be interrupted for objections or for a trustee's interpretation of what the agenda is when it's not clear.
Trustee Guzzo, can we dispense with a lengthy explanation? I've already ruled in your favor. You have the motion. I've asked you to restate the motion by rereading it slowly so that Rosie DiPietro can put it down so that we are all on the same page with your motion.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. I actually emailed it to Director Daly and to Rosie so that it could be shared on the screen so that people can see it. I have no issue. I was trying to reread it, except for I was interrupted.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to appeal.
But you're not giving me a point of order. So Trustee DeRosa, I can only respond if you give me a bylaw by which you're attaching your appeal or your objection. If you do not have that, then I have no way of overruling anything.
The unfortunate part about that, Mr. Chair, is that there is no time to react on the basis of fact, because this is coming completely from left field for the purpose of getting the first word in.
Stop. So I cannot entertain your point of order simply because I do not have a point of order on the table to be able to rule on. Rosie DiPietro, can you please, do you have that motion? Can we get it on the screen?
Mr. Chair, he can't appeal anything you say. You just got
No, I understand that, but I need a point of order. What is he appealing? Is he appealing the order? Excuse me. Is he appealing the order? Is he appealing the fact that Trustee Guzzo has put forward a motion which is valid simply because it is germane to the conversation? She has a seconder, so everything, the protocols have been fulfilled. I cannot read Trustee DeRosa's mind knowing what it is that he's disagreeing to within our bylaws.
Mr. Chair, if I'm appealing on the basis that there is a motion on the table which is deals with the conversation.
But it hasn't come up yet. We're not at that agenda item. It's already been pointed out. So unless you have something else, I'm going to ask you to cease and desist. I'm sorry.
So, Mr. Chair, if you will allow me one closing comment, and I'll say no more to this.
No,
Okay?
that's not a point of order. That's not allowed.
Oh, my.
So,
My
Trustee
goodness.
Agnew, I've already ruled. I'm just going to ask him
Thank you,
to.
Mr. Chair.
I'm going to give him a warning. If he continues, then he's going to have to leave again. So, we have that motion in front of us. Do we have that motion in front of us now? So we're waiting on that motion to be posted on the screen so that oh, here we go. Can we make that bigger, please? Thank you. All right, I will read it. Whereas student safety, can we get rid of the feedback? Trustee DeRosa, you need to turn your mic off, please. Thank you.
Yeah, it's off.
All right, so whereas student safety is paramount in the return to school planning, whereas distancing challenges may arise, whereas we want to be consistent with the messaging we send out to students regarding masking, whereas students are required to wear masking in any other public forums within the region of Halton, and whereas consistency for students is key in the access of reentry, be it resolved that all students JK to 12 be required to wear non-medical mask face coverings with the exception of students with exemptions. Is that correct, Trustee Guzzo?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that is the motion, and I apologize for the typos. I did it quite quickly.
Very good, so no problem. So we have the motion, we have a seconder, moved by Trustee Guzzo. It's been seconded by Trustee Agnew. Is there any discussion?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, do I get to speak to it first?
Yeah, you can do your, yes.
And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I know that this proposal, this motion that is here could potentially make us very popular or very unpopular. But the fact is I have received several concerns from parents of students in JK to grade 3, and consistency seems to be one of the biggest things. I know it will be challenging. I know all of this is going to be challenging. Doesn't matter what we do. However, I really do believe that consistency piece is important. I think it shows us going together as a school community, that we're all in this together wearing masks. And we will also be following other boards who have gone ahead and made this motion. It is not in contradiction to our public health guidelines within the region. And in fact, it just increases our safety and our precautionary measures that we can take as a community. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Trustee Agnew, do you wish to speak to this?
Yes, sure. So thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just further to what Trustee Guzzo said, like with everything, we are going to see people on both sides of this issue. I think, as we have all tried to demonstrate, is that safety is of the utmost concern for us. We were receiving emails and messages right up until the beginning of this meeting today from parents and teachers inquiring about the use of mandatory masks for our kindies to grade 3, so going all the way from JK to 12. And so, again, obviously seconding this, I'm fully supportive of this motion. And I do believe that it's a great safety measure. There can be exceptions in place for those students who simply are not able to wear masks. So we're recognizing that there's going to be situations with students who may not be able to comply And I think that we will be able to work with that. But I do think that if we can make this happen for the majority of students, it would just help to solidify some of those safety concerns, especially given that we're not able to properly social distance in the elementary panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Guzzo. So are all the questions, so we have 5 trustees on queue. Are all the questions relating to the motion put forward by Trustee Guzzo?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so right through. Okay, very good. So then, Trustee DeRosa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, I want to make it perfectly clear that it's not the contents of the motion, but the order that I was objecting to. Secondly, I would have one comment, and I'd have no problem personally supporting this. I'd have one comment, and well, it's actually a question to Director Daly. This motion now is again, how does it line up with the directives that we have from the government, Director Daly?
Secretary Daly, can you please address that question?
Thank you, and through Mr. Chair. So the direction we received for reopening on July 30th from the ministry with regards to masks for students is that all students in grades 4 to 12 would be required to wear non-medical or cloth masks. Students in kindergarten and grade 3 would be encouraged but not required to wear masks. Since then, as recently as I think this past Monday, when the minister had a teleconference with chairs and directors, the minister did state that the ministry will support or would support boards if they were looking to make a change, like the change that's on the table, as long as their local public health officials were in agreement.
Very good. Do you have a supplementary, Trustee DeRosa?
No, that's quite clear. Thank you very much, Director.
Trustee Murphy, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a tough one. So there's one thing is the motion in the bylaw or the directive as it's written. The other is the real world and the practicality is a different matter. So I would like to understand, and I know you, Director Daly or Superintendent Bally, you obviously haven't had a lot of time to think about this. What is the practical instruction to the classroom teacher and the ECE when they have a 4-year-old student who just cannot keep their mask on? So is that child removed from the class? What's from a practical standpoint, what is our tolerance and leeway on this potential policy?
Secretary Daly?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. Maybe, yeah, I will start. I think we would probably, well, I know we would, distinguish between a student for whatever reason is unable to wear the mask properly, despite interventions or you know, kind of lessons taught in the classroom. We'd obviously want to continue to work, especially with our younger students, to explain how to put the mask on safely, how to take it off safely, what to do when it's off, why it's important, all those sorts of things. Encourage students not to because at that grade level, one of the concerns is that it might have, in fact, encouraged students to touch their face and their nose and all those sorts of things. So that's part of the education piece we'd have to do at the school level and share that information with parents and hopefully get their support at home. So I think we would continue to encourage. I think as Trustee Guzzo noted, and I think Trustee Agnew as well, even for the students in 4 to 12, there is a process for reasonable exceptions. So we would have the same thing. You know, an outright refusal to wear the mask would probably, I don't think, stem from the child themselves, but that might be something that we would have to have in conversation with the child's parents. I don't know if there's anything you might want to add to that, Superintendent Bell?
Superintendent Bello?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. I think Director Daly really summarized what our approach would need to be. We're dealing with younger students. I've already talked about the importance of the education. Routines would need to be explicitly taught and reinforced regularly with the staff in the classroom. And, you know, having that tolerance for and understanding that kids are learning, and working with families and staff and being consistent in our messaging, I think would have to be the approach, especially with our youngest students.
Do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, more, maybe just clarifying.
Clarification?
Yeah, so I'm very concerned that this would lead to disciplinary actions. I'm very concerned that we would now have our teachers and our ECEs spending all of their time adjusting people's masks as opposed to teaching or getting on with their lessons plan. So really, the spirit of what we're talking about is behavior modification with a recognition and tolerance of the young people that we're dealing with, and we're not going to expect our teachers to be hard and fast and enforcing these types of rules. What we're trying to do is educate and move the entire population, and let's face it, the reality is it's going to be with us for a while, and all of us need to do the same thing. I agree completely with Trustee Guzzo's sentiment. I'm very concerned about kindergarten grades and grade 1 and 2s not wearing masks. I think it's almost like a Trojan horse in our school. So what I'm torn with, and hopefully I'm coming across properly, is that it's going to be very difficult to enforce, and it's going to take time. And as long as we're allowing that time for behavior modification, then I can support this this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I believe Trustee Agnew has a friendly amendment to the motion. So Trustee Agnew, I'm going to put you ahead of the queue here.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, and perhaps my fellow trustees or Trustee Guzzo may be able to assist with this, but further to Trustee Murphy's concerns, and I believe that many of us share those same concerns. I mean, certainly, this mandate is hoping that we can try to enforce more consistent wearing of masks from K to 12, but we don't want there to be any harsh disciplinary measures for those students who simply are not able to wear them. I know that there are exemptions or exceptions, but the reality is there just may be some students who, like we said, they're 4 years old or 5 years old, they're having an issue with it, parents are having a challenge. So I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for us here to make an amendment where we do put right into the motion that this would be without some sort of disciplinary measures for those younger students. I'm struggling with the wording a little bit because I want to get the sentiment across, but I'd like to get thoughts from Trustee Guzzo perhaps on the idea of that amendment so that we can satisfy the concerns that Trustee Murphy has brought forward and still try to stay with the spirit of this motion.
Well, can I add just something? Is if it's disrupting the class, something has to be done. I mean, you can't hold the whole class hostage because 1 or 2 children don't want to wear their mask, and the instructor, the teacher, has to keep going back to them. So
right. So I think we want to take away, as we had said, we want to eliminate, the extra work. Yes. I have spoken to a number of kindergarten teachers on this matter, but we don't want to add anything to their workload. We know that the younger students, as we know before, are little people, and it's like herding cats sometimes. So I don't want this to become a policing issue for those younger students. So I'm wondering again if there's an opportunity for us to put something in the motion that addresses that there wouldn't be disciplinary measures or strict enforcement for those younger grades, but we would still like to have that requirement put forward.
All right, so I'll, do we want to, Secretary Daly?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I think she asked me a question in regards to my thoughts on can I answer that?
Well, there's 2 parts. She wants thoughts on how to prevent this to become a disciplinary matter. And then the other part was whether or not you had something that you could put forward to your motion to address that. So I think maybe I'm going to go to Secretary Daly first, and then I'll come back to you, if you don't mind, Trustee Guzzo. Secretary Daly?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment. I think the motion as written is pretty clear in what the intent is. I would argue that is sufficient. I don't think we need to add into a motion specific directions to teachers at the classroom level as to how they would administer a particular policy. That would be something that we would do through senior staff. I think the spirit and intent of the motion is pretty clear the way it is. I'm just offering that up.
Trustee Guzzo, go ahead.
Thank you. I was just going to, through you, Mr. Chair, I was just going to say that the intent of this is not to become punitive to those students. It is a learning curve, obviously. We're all learning still with outside of the school. And to clarify, this would be consistent with what we're asking the grades 4 to 12. It wouldn't be outside. And really, I would hope that we don't want the teachers to spend their days trying to readjust. If it's not working, it's not working. We're going to do the best we can, given what we've been handed with and what we're dealing with. But I don't think that my intent definitely was not to make it punitive for these kids, our youngest students. Should they not be able to keep it on? And there is a learning curve to it. I think it's twofold, like I said earlier, which is, one is it makes them part of the whole school community. Everybody's doing it. They're doing it together. And two, it's another measure of safety for all involved.
So we have Superintendent, you allow me to speak. We have Superintendent Cipriano that wishes to make a comment to this particular motion. So Superintendent Cipriano, can you please, you have the floor.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I'll retract my hand up. I'll continue to listen. Thank you.
All right. So go ahead, Trustee Guzzo.
No, I was just going to say if an amendment is what trustees need to clarify that, I would be happy with that friendly amendment, and we can look at disciplinary measures will be waived for our J to 3 students.
So as stated by Secretary Daly, figures that the way the motion reads, it can be addressed by staff, through their discretionary powers, and don't have to go into a disciplinary matter. But I'll turn it back to Secretary Daly.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. I think we'd frame it in a different way, that it's left up to the discretion of the teacher. Yes. I do agree with Trustee Guzzo in terms of it is a learning process, and we're trying to bring everybody along, and that would certainly be the approach. I'll be honest with you, I don't feel comfortable with a motion at the board table determining disciplinary action at the school level. And again, that's not to leave it open for teachers to discipline students if they don't comply. I think that, as I said, the intent of the motion, it's very clear to me. I would clearly express that through, and I'm sure it's clear to our superintendents, and when we work with our schools to encourage students, to teach them how to wear the mask properly, and that would be my preferred approach. But again, I'm offering that respectfly.
So I have a point.
Point of clarification, Trustee Chair Intumasi, for just one moment on the amendment piece.
Can I just get one thing in? It's really, really quick.
Yeah, of course.
So the question is, can teachers touch students? We need to get an answer to that in order to move forward with this particular motion. Secretary Daly or whomever.
I'm not sure in context what the question's leading to, but
so to adjust a mask. to go up to a student and rearrange the mask if it's not on properly after instructions have been given?
I think teacher contact with a student is really done in safety terms and in limited terms. It would be to redirect in an unsafe environment. I think the teacher would model how to put the mask on and off, or the DCE if that's the case. I think if a student required help, teachers would, keeping in mind their physical distancing and their own masking requirements, they'd offer that help. Again, I'm thinking at a primary level, particularly at kindergarten level, teachers are always helping kids off and on with boots and jackets and hats and all those sorts of things. So I think we continue to use our good judgment in that respect.
All right, go ahead.
Can I just do my point of clarification, Chair Antomasi?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, and thank you, Director Daly. I hope that it didn't come across that I was trying to imply that I wanted to instruct educators through this motion on what disciplinary measures needed to be taken or should be taken. My intent behind the amendment was simply trying to actually alleviate that concern, to say that there wouldn't be any disciplinary measures taken. If that can be resolved through a procedural piece or through education, that's fine. I was actually trying to be more amiable with respect to what would be expected of teachers, and not try to direct them in having to discipline or in what disciplinary measures they needed to take. So I just wanted to clarify that. That was not at all what I wanted to put into this motion as far as directing teachers and how they should be handling any type of discipline as it pertains to mask wearing. It was just simply to try to alleviate that actual issue from teachers, so we wouldn't have to add to them.
Yeah, your point's understood. So, Trustee Agnew, do you have?
I just want to say thank you, Trustee Agnew, for that clarification. I appreciate that.
So, do you have a friendly amendment?
Well, it doesn't. So it doesn't sound. I mean, after this discussion, it doesn't sound like that. I mean, I really was trying to be amiable, to try to make an amendment if it would make trustees feel better who wanted to support this, but were concerned about that disciplinary piece. We're concerned about, any potential issues for teachers or for students who weren't able to wear the mask. So it was really just trying to be amiable in order to make trustees feel comfortable with this. If Director Daly is saying that we don't need that in this, and that can be handled through education, through policy, through procedure, I'm fine with that. It was more just to try to, make everybody comfortable with this. So if we don't need it, I'm happy to not do it.
Okay. So, Trustee so wait a minute. So do we want to give last word on this to Secretary Daly?
Chair, I have a question.
I'm in the queue too.
Yes, you are. So you know what? We will move forward with Trustee Carabella. She has the floor.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I did want to say that.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Withdraw.
You're next in queue, Vice Chair Dewar.
I withdraw.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand what's happening and what we're hoping for. And I think that I read the Sick Kids recommendation, and it says here they're currently recommending the use of masks for high school students with consideration for middle school students whenever physical distancing cannot be maintained. And I wanted to also know what our local public health unit is saying about masking for JK to grade 3.
Very good. So I'll pass this over to Superintendent Bello to address.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The inquiry was made with public health when there was a request for information and research pertaining to masking for young students at the board meeting on the 12th of August. The response that we received at that time is that Dr. McGanny is meeting with Provincial Ministry of Health this week. In fact, I do believe it is today, and that they would be able to provide specific feedback following that meeting. In the meantime, Dr. McGanny and Halton Region Public Health did provide some information, which I had shared with the Board of Trustees. And their recommendation is that schools could consider a policy that recommends the use of masks according to grade level or class grouping, and that we would need to work through a risk assessment process. they would not be available to support us with that risk assessment process until after the meeting that she is having today, I believe. So I do want that to be made clear that the offer is there, but it would not be available until after that time. So that's all the information they were able to provide. And they provided a link, which I shared with all of you, that speaks to masking and a variety of different topics.
Trustee Carey,
Okay,
or point of clarification?
Thank you. Yeah, point of clarification. So basically, there was someone else mentioned earlier on that we should be doing what the local health public unit, we should be in agreement with them. So, and you're saying basically today or tomorrow, we're going to find out whether they would be in agreement. So if we don't pass this motion and then they would like us to mask, then we can mask, could come up later following their directives. I did also want to say that I've heard both from people who would like masking and who don't want masking for young kids. I think that if a parent really is worried or their child likes masking, you know, they can certainly wear it. I don't think it has to be that nobody in JK and SK wears masks. We talked about that actually. We're encouraging them if they wish, and so that it's a more of a starting with a more of a positive attitude. Thank you.
Very good. Superintendent Bello, did you want to finish up to address that, or do I want to pass this to, no? We're okay? All right, thank you, Trustee Carabella. Vice Chair Dort, you now have the floor.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm in support of this motion. However, I have a question here because I received several emails from parents wanting this, and I know it's going to keep our students and teachers in the classroom safe. But my question here, Mr. Chair, is have we given any thought to the cost involved, the budget involved, the funding for the mask? Is there any requirements from the board? Do we need to budget for that?
Secretary Daly?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, and that we would provide the masks for the students.
Thank you, but who could answer that question, Secretary Daly?
Well, it's not my motion, so I would say the expectation of the Board of Trustees that we're providing a mask or the masks for students.
Through Mr. Chair, could Trustee Guzzo respond if any thought has been given to that?
Sorry, what did he say? Vice Chair Dort, did you direct your question to the Trustee Guzzo who put the motion forward?
Yes, please. I would like to know if any thought has been given to that. I'm in support of this, but I'd like to know if any thought has been given regarding the budgeting, funding, and what's the intent of this motion.
All right, so Trustee Guzzo, you have a question asked of you. Can you please address it?
I can. I didn't include it in this motion. I know there is a dollar amount that is attached to it. I think that that's a question that we should ask, and I don't know that an answer would be able to be given quickly. I don't know how quickly Superintendent Loss can run some numbers, because I don't know what the cost is in providing the masks for 4 to 12, what that works out to be per student. So I'm open to either way. Again, these are our youngest student population, so there's lots of considerations to be taken. I would think if it was manageable from a budgetary perspective, that we would provide similar to what we're providing for 4s to 12s. But I see Superintendent Merritt can answer cost. That's awesome. So I think, thank you for opening that up, Trustee Dewart. So I think we can decide that as a group. I would suggest that we be consistent in what we give to our grade 4s to 12s, and we do the same if we're requiring the same of JK to grade 3.
All right, thank you, Trustee Guzzo. Vice Chair Dewart, does that answer?
Actually, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair,
yes,
I thought Superintendent Merrick was going to say something about it, but
I was asking you first, so now I will
Yeah.
go to Superintendent Merrick
Yeah,
to address the second part of your question.
So I'll just add one more thing to Superintendent Merrick's question, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, is what are other boards who have passed this motion doing? Are they funding, is the board paying for it, or are the parents expected to pay? Maybe Superintendent Merrick might know a little more.
All right, so Superintendent Merrick, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, to do masks, for the board to provide masks for all of the JK to 3 students. We're looking at roughly $100,000. That'd be one mask per student, plus a few extras for the schools for students that may start later or lose a mask in the first couple of days or defective ones. But the other piece around this is we heard early on from the province that the mask for the grade 4 to 12 students would be provided to the boards. And I was assuming that would be one mask plus a little bit of buffer for all the students as well. We've since heard that may not be true. It may be only providing masks for students that cannot provide their own masks. So we may be buying more masks for the grade 4 to 12 students as well, if we're going to provide at least one mask to every student across the board. So we have been ordering some extras just in case the shipment that we anticipated from the ministry didn't show up, or it was the exact number for the kids that we have on our board, and we needed some extras at different schools to account for changes in enrollment and lost masks. But we may need to buy a whole bunch more if we're only getting enough for only for students that can't provide their own mask or forget their mask. So there's a bit of a gray area there right now because we're still waiting direction on how many masks are actually going to be provided for the province, both for the 4 to 12, and then I presume we're not going to get anything from the province for JK to 3. So that'd be $100,000 roughly additional expenditure for us. As far as what other boards are doing, I'm not sure yet. I mean, most of this has happened earlier this week, so I'm not sure they know what they're doing yet. So we'll have to. I can make some calls and reach out, but we'll have to. I'll have to get back to you on that one. What other boards are doing?
Thank you.
Does that satisfy your questions, Vice Chair Dewar?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Would be great if you could get some clarification on what the other boards are doing, and collectively as a group, what do we want to do? We can decide that.
Very good. Thank you. Trustee O'Brien, you have the floor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I want to commend Trustee Guzzo for bringing forward this motion. It has a spirit that is so important. Keeping in mind the vulnerability of these young children must be safeguarded, must be put forward to the foremost. So I commend her on the spirit of this motion. On the other hand, I'm looking at the September, and we're going back to a system where we're asking.
Trustee O'Brien, just bear with me for a moment. Can we have the trustees turn off their microphone, because we're getting background noise that makes it hard for us to hear.
I'm so sorry, Trustee Jamasi. The power's out in my house, so I'm in a McDonald's.
So you're the culprit. Go ahead then, continue.
I will speak loud, and maybe we'll have to go outside after this.
Can you send us a few hamburgers, please?
Guys, try. I'm just thinking about going back to September. Teachers going to be teaching in a whole different way. Activity-based teaching will be with social distancing. The playground's going to be different. And I'm just wondering how much more we could put on teachers before we start burning them out, before we start getting long-term disability, before we start getting long-term leaves. So I'm torn with this motion. But I do want to say I really commend the spirit of it. Thank you. That's all.
Brian. Trustee Guzzo, you have the floor now.
I'm sorry, I wasn't in the queue.
I have. I understand that, but that's what I have in front of me. So if you're not in the queue, we'll pass it over. Yeah, we'll pass it over to Trustee DeRosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. First a comment and then a question, if I may. I am in support of the spirit of the motion, but when we've gotten to the early discussion over the implementation of this and with respect to the issues that rises, a thought comes to mind that maybe we should just leave it to the discretion of the parents and not basically tell them that they can't do it between, up to the ages, up to the class of four. Because ultimately, it's the parents, there are some parents who are expressing this concern of not being required to wear masks, and others who are on the other side of that fence. So what I'm suggesting is rather than develop a whole bureaucracy of administration around it and policies, ultimately, why don't you let the parents who want their kids to wear the mask, give them the discretion to do that?
So Trustee DeRosa, sorry for interjecting, but if we're talking about a motion brings about a policy to provide and allow the masking. So as an institution, we make the decision based on, that is the board, based on allowing something.
I understand.
We can't give discretion. We can't give discretion. So it's something uniform across the board. So if you have a policy in place, then you can deal with it. If you don't have a policy and leave it to the parents.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Mr.
go ahead.
Chair, I was just trying to make the point that
the
decision to wear a mask should be left to the parents. Because right now they're under the impression, based on the directive that's been given by the government, they're under the impression that if they want their kids to wear a mask, they're not allowed to. I'm suggesting.
No. So Trustee DeRosa, the government gives us guidelines through policies and procedures, and we interpret them and we put them forward in our organization, which happens to be Halton Catholic District School Board. We have a motion, and the motion has been recognized. We can't make a decision that would go against something put forward by the ministry or the government. All we can do is import what the government allows us to do. And the government is allowing us to pass a policy whereby we're directing parents, or we're directing our students when they're in our custody to wear masks. So I appreciate your commentary. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, just one.
You still have the floor. Go ahead.
I thought we had clarified through Director Daly that the government directive right now is to require masking from 4 to 12. Is that correct?
Secretary Daly, go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the question to Trustee DeRosa. So the July 30th direction that boards were given was that masks were to be worn, students grades 4 to 12. Students in K to 3 can wear a mask if their parents want them to wear a mask. Our position has always been that we would encourage that. Under the current direction from the provincial government, students in K to 3, if they choose, can wear a mask. Or if their parents choose, it's optional. It's optional.
So, thank you. I don't know what we're trying to change, but I
motion
am in
is
favor of the
clear.
spirit of the motion.
All right, thank you. Trustee Agnew.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, just a couple of final points from my perspective, and I'm not trying to change anybody's mind, nor am I trying to debate the spirit of this motion. I just wanted to make a few quick comments. First of all, if you look at, and I understand the guidance from public health is not telling us that they don't support this. If you look at anyone that lives in the region of Halton, as Trustee Guzzo, I believe, mentioned, for the ages of 3 and up, they are required to wear a mask when they enter a public space. They cannot put that same, that is the mandate that is coming from public health. So we're looking at kids that are 3 and under not having to wear them. We're looking at kids that are 3 and over having to wear them. So I don't think it's out of line for us to be looking at our JK students to 12 to wear masks. I think the second piece we have to be mindful of is, and I was involved with recommendations for that sick kid policy through a committee that I sit on. The sick kids, although they don't recommend their mask wearing for younger students, they also pair that with proper social distancing. And if we're going to start sort of picking and choosing what pieces of the Sick Kids guideline we want to adhere to. And I'm not saying that that's what's happening, but if that's what people are considering, we are not actually offering our students the mandated spacing required in all of our classrooms to keep them safe socially distance-wise. And so taking a look at masking for these students, while not heavily recommended in the Sick Kids guideline, we're also not adhering to the guidelines around social distancing that have come forward from that Sick Kids guideline. So I think that we just, as trustees, have to take a look at the recommendations for public health, which I know that we're doing, but again, public health is recommending or they're actually mandating that kids 3 and up wear masks when they're out in public. If we take a look at that, if we look at what some of the other boards are doing with regards to masking for our JK to grade 12 students, I just think these are all things to take into consideration when we're making this decision.
Thank you, Trustee Agnew. We're going to allow Secretary Daly to make a comment. After that, we're going to go to closing comments to the trustee that put the motion on the floor, and that is Trustee Guzzo. Secretary Daly, go ahead.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. And this really is just by way of information, and I'm sure that trustees have received this information from parents, but I think it's important that we do recognize, as we're making this decision, that there will be some parents who will be very much opposed to the idea that they're being told their younger kids have to wear masks. So I know, I'm sure trustees have heard that from some parents, but I just thought I would let people know that they can anticipate some reaction from those parents. And I think it's also important to note, Trustee Agnew, when she talked about distancing and masks and one or the other, it's kind of that whole number of protection strategies that are going to best serve our students. So it's a combination of distancing and masks and hand hygiene and all of those sorts of things. So it's all of them considered together, I think, that are going to give us the best opportunity to keep our students and staff as safe as we can.
All right, Trustee Guzzo, you get to sum up your motion and tell us why we should be supporting you.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, and I'm not going to make this long because I think Trustee Agnew hit a lot of the points, and Director Daly did as well. We need to remember that we wear masks not only to protect ourselves, but to protect others. We have vulnerable students within our own classes. We have vulnerable teachers. We have teachers that are immune compromised who will also, this helps aid in protecting them. I wear a mask to protect, as somebody said to me, I wear a mask not only to protect myself, but to protect you. And masks aren't the only measure that we need to take, as Director Daly just said. Trying to maintain physical distancing, good hygiene, good hand washing, good control, and staying home when ill. There are so many things we have to navigate. And again, the bigger piece of it is having our youngest students who look up to our older grades to be part of our school community. And this is our reality at the moment, which is utilizing masks. And what better way when we're spending 8 hours a day together to work on these things together and to help protect each other in having a safe return to school. I thank you for your consideration, and the stakeholders who have been advocating for this, thank you as well.
Thank you, Trustee Guzzo. So we have a motion on wearing masks from JK to 12 put forward by Trustee Guzzo, seconded by Trustee Agnew. I will now take it to a vote. Student Trustee Gubert, how do you vote?
In favor.
Oh, she's here. All right. So I understand that Trustee Kelly is now joined us. So I'll ask Trustee Kelly, Student Trustee Kelly, how do you vote on this matter?
I am in favor as well. Thank you.
All right, very good. So Trustee Murphy?
In favor.
Trustee O'Hearn, Trustee O'Hearn's not, Trustee Agnew?
In favor.
Trustee Guzzo?
In favor.
Trustee Duart?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
Opposed.
Trustee O'Brien?
Opposed.
Trustee DeRosa?
I will abstain.
All right, so motion carries. And all right. Besides, there's one missing, so anyways, okay. So, seeing there are no other questions to your presentation, Secretary Daly, can we now move to action items, and that is response to last night's delegation. In accordance with our board bylaws and policy I-06 delegation to the board, we have 4 options. Option number 1, receive this delegation as information. Number 2, defer the matter to a future meeting. Number 3, request a staff report on this matter to be considered at a future meeting. And number 4, make a decision tonight. I will now open the floor to any trustee who wishes to make or put forward a motion on this matter. I see that we have Vice Chair.
Oh, sorry.
We have Vice Chair Duart. Do you wish to put forward a motion, Vice Chair Duart?
Through Mr. Chair, yes, I'd like to thank Mrs. Calvis for presenting the delegation last night, but I'd like to accept this as information item.
All right, so do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Seconded by Trustee DeRosa. All right, so now I will open it for discussion. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, I will take it to a vote. Let's make it a recorded vote. Student Trustee Kelly?
In favor.
Student Trustee Goubert?
In favor.
Trustee Murphy?
It's been a long time since I've been a student, my friend. In favor.
Yes, I know. We'd like to make you a student again, though. Trustee Agnew?
In favor.
Trustee Duart?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
Trustee DeRosa?
In favor.
Motion carries. We are now moving to agenda
Chair.
item. Yes?
Chair, could you record my vote? I'm in favor. Trustee Guzzo.
Did I miss you, Trustee Guzzo? I did put a check mark on your name, sorry. Trustee Guzzo? You're in favor, correct?
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, my apologies. All right, so we are now moving to agenda item 8.2, elementary return plan. Trustee DeRosa's motion. This motion was postponed from the August 12th, 2020 special board meeting. I will read the motion. Whereas the uncertainties and safety challenges that COVID-19 still presents, even with the staff's best efforts to mitigate the risk of a return to school in September, students, teachers, custodians, and all other support staff will still be exposed. A risk that is heightened by the anticipated second wave of COVID-19, a corresponding flu season, and still the uncertain impact of return to stage 3 by the GTA and surrounding communities. The motion reads, be it resolved that, subject to a clear directive from the ministry to contrary, the Board of Trustees directs the Secretary of the Board and Director of Education to amend the current plan to return to school to reflect a limit of 15 students at the elementary level and temporarily delay the return to school in September and continue to deliver distance learning. In the meantime, continue to monitor the progress of COVID-19 in the community in consultation with the Halton Health authorities, ministry officials, and parents for a timely but safe return. This motion was moved by Trustee DeRosa and seconded by Trustee Murphy. Trustee DeRosa, can you please lead the discussion on your motion before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In fact, I'm going to take the opportunity to update the motion and to reflect the latest developments from the government, and maybe reflect some of the discussions that have ensued since this motion was taken. So I will read my.
So can we have the updated? So you wish to make a friendly amendment to your own motion?
Yes.
All right. So do we have that friendly amendment on the screen for all trustees to see? Is that it? No? Thank you. She's got it off the platform. No. With us as we get the motion on. There we go.
If you scroll down, I just want to, there's been a few versions there back and forth, so. Yeah.
Is that it?
I have it on my.
All right. So what are the changes? Can you point to the changes so that everybody?
So.
Can you highlight the changes, Rosie? No? Okay. All right. Did you want to read it for us then, Trustee DeRosa?
Due to the uncertainties and safety challenges that COVID-19 still presents, and in spite of the staff's best efforts to mitigate the risks of a safe return to school in September, students, teachers, custodians, and all other support staff will still be exposed. This is a risk that is heightened by the anticipated second wave of COVID-19 in conjunction with the corresponding flu season, and still the uncertain impact of a return to stage 3 by the GTA and the surrounding communities. Be it resolved that until such time that the board receives a clear directive from the government to the contrary, the Board of Trustees directs the Director of Education to amend the current plan for returning to school to reflect the approved government standard for physical distancing of 2 meters, which currently results in approximately 15 to 20 students per class, depending on the size of the class. Furthermore, the Board of Trustees also directs the Director of Education to plan and begin a staggered return to school for all students starting September the 8th, with a full return to classes no later than the end of the 3rd week of September. In the interim, staff will continue the effort of reducing the class sizes organically by reallocating existing resources where possible, and while continuing to monitor the progress of COVID-19 in the community in consultation with Halton Health, government, parents, and labor groups, so as to ensure a safe return. That is the amendment.
So do we have a seconder to this amended motion?
I'll second.
I'll second it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So seconded by, moved by Trustee DeRosa, seconded by Trustee Murphy. All right, now I will open it up for discussion. I believe Student Trustee Goubert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, I'd like to direct my question towards Trustee DeRosa. When it says about the staggered return to schools for all students, I would just like to clarify. Let's say a certain group of students are staggered and they're not to enter the building until, let's say, the 2nd or 3rd week of September. Will those students be be placed in online learning until they can gain access to the school facilities, or will they just have to delay their start to the education?
Go ahead.
Thank
So
you
the
for your
question is to you, Trustee DeRosa. Can you please address it?
Yes, thank you for your question. I might want to remark that the manner in which the staggering is to take place. Sorry. I'm speaking.
Trustee Dort, you have your microphone on. Can you turn it off, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Secretary or Trustee DeRosa. Continue.
Again, thank you for your question. But I might want to remark that the spirit of the motion is to set general guidelines and direction.
This will pick you up.
That'll pick me up. That'll work. All right.
Technical difficulties, just bear with us.
Perils of having a very low and but loud voice, so my apologies. So again, the spirit of the motion is to set general guidelines for the staff. The details of how the gradual return would take place are things that still need to be worked out. So I refrain from getting into the details because largely that is an operational issue to make happen. There will be logistics issues that will come up, and I will not pretend at this stage of the game to have the answer to that. So the spirit of the motion is a general direction. I'm sorry that I don't have the probably not the answer you wanted to hear, but I would welcome any Director Daly or anyone else who can opine on what this general direction really sets up.
Do we have anybody that wishes to address further student trustee? Okay, Secretary Daly, go ahead.
Thank you, and through Mr. Chair, and I don't think it'll be all that helpful. We found out yesterday at 5:30 that we had the opportunity to stagger entry over 2 weeks. As everyone knows, we had although it was a shorter board meeting last night, it did go to 11. So senior staff has really not had much opportunity to anticipate what advantages we might have to staggering a start. So how that would actually roll out, Trustee Gilbert, is it's really undetermined at this point.
Do you have a point of clarification or subsequent question, student trustee Gilbert?
No, not at the moment. I completely understand that it's not clear at this point, but the answers were sufficient for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Guzzo?
Sorry, my mute button was taking a minute there. Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So just, I was wondering if I could ask, and I'm not sure, I think, ask Trustee DeRosa and then probably Superintendent Lofts or Director Daly, but I understand the spirit in which you, in this motion. However, we've heard now that public health is going to defer to the ministry, and the ministry is saying distancing of 1 to 2 meters, and as distancing as best we can. What does this look like in the terms of additional teachers and classroom space? Because in theory this is fantastic, but if we can't secure space to actually facilitate this, how do we fulfill this motion?
Trustee DeRosa, do you wish to address that?
Yes, thank you, Trustee Guzzo. First, I would say that I would refer everybody to the current directive that's in place from the government. And I think Director Daly, I gave you the opportunity, Director Daly, to clarify that early on in our discussions. And my understanding of it is that the government is expecting a full return. With respect to the fulfillment of this, I did say in the motion that this is subject to ministry direction. So the spirit of this motion really puts forward the social distancing that is required in order to keep not only our kids safe or our students safe, but also every other person that's in our schools. And it sets out the guideline, not in terms of numbers of students, because I think that's to some degree a diversion that leads the discussion into other places. What the spirit of this motion is that if the government has set out the guidelines of a 2-meter distancing everywhere else, it should still apply in our schools. And that certainly, this motion gives the government an opportunity to consider that very, very important question. Whether, there's been a lot of talk about the 15 or some other number, or even the 25 for that matter. I submit to you that what drives that number is really the size of the class. And in some cases it'll be 15, some cases it'll be 20, some cases it'll be 25. So I would suggest to move away the discussion away from a hard number and to fall into the decision of spending a whole lot of money, which frankly is quickly dwindling, for the purpose of reaching a magic number. The message we have to send to the government is that the 2-meter distancing, which will drive everything else, that applies currently everywhere else, should also apply to keeping our schools safe, our children safe, our teachers safe, and all other staff safe.
Trustee Guzzo, do you have a supplementary? Do you want a point of clarification?
It didn't really answer my question further to what I see in front of me, but thank you. But I also posed it to Superintendent Lofts, I think, or Director Daly, whoever.
Yeah, I was just asking whether you had a point of clarification before I go to Superintendent Lofts.
I appreciate it, Chair and Tomasi. I think, thank you, but if we could have the other part, that'd be great.
All right, so Superintendent Lofts, can you please address part of the question that Trustee Guzzo put forward?
Certainly, to you, Mr. Chair. So if I understand correctly, I guess we'd be looking at a classroom size between 15 and 20 students. So if we look at just the actual cost, we're looking at between 110, 115 million to get us towards the 15 students, to about 38 to 40 million for the 20 students. It would fall somewhere in between there. To put it in perspective as well, as far as classrooms that we require, we would need approximately 110 classrooms on the low end, up to over 500 classrooms on the high end. And just to kind of give some context to that, if we're looking at, let's say, a 400 student school or so, that would be the equivalent between 14 and approximately 19 schools. So, and that's assuming we could find that space within our region.
Sorry, thank you, Superintendent Lofts. Secretary Daly, do you wish to address this at all?
I don't think so, unless there's additional information in the question we haven't covered.
All right, so Trustee Guzzo, I'm going to give you a point of clarification if you wish.
Yeah, no, just can he, Superintendent Lofts, repeat the dollar amount with this? Because I know it's changed now from the original motion from 15 to 20, and I missed it. It cut out there on me.
All right, so yeah, go ahead, Superintendent Lofts.
Thank you to you, Mr. Chair. On the high end, so on closer to the 15 student in per classroom, we're looking at between 110 and 115 million. And on the low end, which would be having the 20 students per classroom, I mean low end as far as price, we're looking between around 38 to 40 million dollars.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
I believe now we have, do you need to
Yes.
answer something, Trustee DeRosa? Go ahead.
Yes, I would like to clarify certain things. First of all, thank you very much for the evaluation of the costs. You know, it's good to contextualize this in terms of in a financial context, because it brings home the size of the problems we are dealing with, and certainly that same problem has been recognized by other boards. And many of them have made that point very, very publicly. We are actually, I mean, in last night's discussion, I think there was some contemplation that spending $6.8 million to get us to 25 might be a solution to this. I hope that this clarifies that that would be an expenditure that not only would basically erode our savings significantly for a while with no view or no plan to replenishment. This motion is intended to send a message to the size of the problem that we have, and it's a problem that we have been taxed with a choice to make our kids, we're a compromise to make our kids safe. I'm suggesting my suggestion to this motion is that that is not a compromise necessarily that we want to take responsibility for. Excuse me, Mr. Chair, but I've got to finish my thoughts.
I know, but you can finish that when you do your summary at the end of your motion. I think because we have questions that you're going to have to address, and you may be...
I will address them, Mr. Chair. Now you've cut my train of thought and my opportunity to clarify certain important things.
All right.
So in the spirit and with the message of trying and the priority of trying to keep our people safe in our schools. Until last night, it was generally accepted that 15 was the number. We have opinions from experts, medical experts, who say that absolutely that 15 to 20 is the range to adhere to, and confirmation that a second wave will be here sooner than later. So this is a message that has to be sent out loud and clear. The financial stress and challenges that we are facing with the current government directive, and it's an appeal to put the safety of people in the
Can't hear.
I can't hear.
Yes. Sorry, Mr. Chair, if I...
Gone too long?
Okay, talk too much.
All right. So I will pass it over to Trustee O'Brien so that we don't get any points of order. Trustee O'Brien.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make an amendment to this amendment.
All right. So you go ahead.
This is a strikeout and insert. I'd like to strike out two phrases.
Oh, this is more of a friendly amendment.
It is not a friendly amendment.
No, it's not. Okay, go ahead. We're gonna let's see where it goes.
Okay, the first phrase I would like to strike out is, until such time that the board receives a clear directive from the government to the contrary. That's the first one. Did you get that?
Trustee O'Brien?
Yes. And the second one is, after the word school, to reflect the approved government standards for physical distancing of 2 meters, which currently results in approximately 50 students per class, depending on the size of the class. That one I'm going to do a strikeout and an insert.
All right, so go ahead.
So did you say 15 or 15 to 20? Have you got the right motion in front of you?
15.
We all have the same motion in front of us.
Oh, sorry, 15 to 20. My mistake. I'd like to strike out that phrase and insert this phrase. To a cap size of 25 students.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. You're going to have to go slow so that we can get it in there, okay?
All
right, go ahead.
To a cap size of 25 students per class at the elementary level.
Okay, we've got it.
Correct.
All right, so you're just dealing with elementary here.
Correct. That is my amendment.
Can I suggest a word change instead of at? In
Sure.
Elementary?
Yes.
Okay. In elementary.
In the element.
It's an elementary. It's what I was just going to get to the schools. But you can't have all level. That's what I said, yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Just leave it the way it is. It's up to you, Trustee O'Brien, if you want to leave it the way it is. Otherwise, you have to change the whole sentence.
I think that's okay, yeah.
In elementary.
In elementary, yeah.
Oh, in elementary, okay, schools. Okay. Any other changes?
No.
All right. So can I have a seconder to that friendly amendment?
Commercial aggressive.
So since there isn't a seconder,
Mr. Chair.
Your friendly amendment fails,
Mr. Chair.
Trustee. Yep, Trustee Dort.
I'll second that.
All right, seconded by Trustee Dort. I'll now open the floor. Questions. Go ahead.
Can I open debate, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, discussion. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. The constant thing that I've heard today is putting our elementary school students' health at the forefront. Now, the truth is, we cannot put them we cannot secure their health as much as we would like to, but we can do what we can do. Our ministry has allowed us a 2% delving into our reserve funds for this very purpose. So we ask ourselves the question, what are our reserve funds for? Well, they are for emergencies. Are we not in an emergency now? We are in the middle of a pandemic. This is why we have reserve funds. This amendment would make our elementary schools safer. And I feel that we must do what we can do at this point in time. And that's why this amendment is here. I'll open with debate with that, and I'll save my closing comments for later.
Yes, go ahead. So Vice Chair Dort, you have the floor.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we were originally talking about 15 to 20 students, but now we are talking about 25 students. My question here is, are we talking about 25 students average per class across the board, or are we talking about the actual physical 25 students per class?
Okay, so we're talking about elementary only at this particular juncture?
Correct.
So, go ahead.
Now, are we talking about average elementary class size across the board that includes consultants, certs, and all that stuff? Or are we talking about physical 25 students per class?
Okay, so is your question total in a classroom, or are we talking about just students?
Average across the board. Is it 25 students average across the system? Or are we talking about...
No. So Vice Chair Dort, I understand it's across the system, but my question is, are you referring to 20 students plus whomever is teaching, or 15 to 20 in total?
No, I'm talking about the amended motion now to cap size of 25. Since we're amending the motion. So I want to know if this number 25 is average class size across the system, or is it the class size, physical class size in a classroom? Am I clear? I am wondering if my question is clear.
Okay, so who are you addressing this to? The original motion put forward by Trustee DeRosa, or the amended motion by Trustee O'Brien?
It's the amended motion, Mr. Chair.
All right, so then the question goes to Trustee O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to ask that. But before I do, I want to make sure I'm absolutely certain on my knowledge, and I'm going to ask Director Daly one question. The figures you gave us for the 6.8 million, was that for a hard cap or an average? I assumed it was a hard cap.
You're correct.
Secretary,
you're correct.
Okay, then in answer to Trustee Duarte's question, I'm going to say it is for a hard cap. That means no class goes above 25. That is my amendment.
Very good. Vice Chair Duarte, you either have a point of clarification or a subsequent question.
Okay, I get it now. The second question to Trustee O'Brien, now since we're talking in the amendment, is this motion, can it be split into two, or is it one whole? For example, the first part, cap size of 25 students per elementary school, one part of the motion, and the second motion altogether. Further, the Board of Trustees, is this something that you're thinking of, or is it just one?
For another.
Okay, thank you. Excellent question.
So, yeah, go ahead, Trustee O'Brien.
It could be broken down into two. I'm open to that. The only problem is I see with that phrase, until such time that the board receives a clear distinction from the government to the contrary, being a phrase that would pretty much invalidate the whole motion anyway. I think it has to be taken out regardless, because I don't see the ministry all of a sudden giving us a directive in this. And I think my understanding is they're leaving it up to us to decide this. So actually, I would like to keep it as one amendment.
So you don't want to break it up. So that answers Vice Chair Duarte's question. So
yes, thank you.
All right. So Trustee Murphy, we're coming to you now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Trustee O'Brien or to anybody else that can answer this question. What evidence is there that 25 students per classroom is safer than 30?
So that's a loaded question, Trustee Murphy.
No, it's a relevant question.
No. I said it's loaded. I didn't say it's invalid. I says it's a loaded question. There's a lot of moving parts to it. So I'll start with Secretary Daly, and then we'll move down the line and see who can give us all the answers. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just a point of privilege. Could Trustee Murphy repeat his question? I had trouble hearing it.
Yes, okay.
My question is, what evidence is there that 25 students per classroom is safer than 30?
Correct. Okay, so did you hear that, Trustee Agnew?
I did, yes. Thank you.
Very good. So we'll move to Secretary Daly to start, and then we'll see where else we need to go.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure I could point to any medical evidence. I think the information that Superintendent Merrick supplied to trustees around the difference between 30 students in a class and 25, and how how much room you gain is it's minimal in terms of the average classroom. I think it's important too that trustees are aware that in terms of the direction we've received from the ministry, and that's in the July 30th Guide to Reopening in Schools, the reference to distancing is as much distancing as possible between students and staff, between staff members, should always be promoted. And that's in the context of all the other factors that we're trying to put in place to ensure student and staff safety.
You have a supplementary or a point of clarification, or does anybody else?
Yes, I have a supplementary question.
Go
Superintendent Lofts, I know that this was just presented to you and may be difficult for you to distinguish from the previous data that you provided, which was elementary and secondary. What would be the financial impact of making this change? And maybe also part of that is for Superintendent Merrick, what is the feasibility of acquiring those teachable spaces within the time frame to start school?
So do we want to go to Superintendent Lofts?
Certainly, to you, Mr. Chair. Just to confirm, if I understand correctly, what this change to the motion on the table is essentially what we brought in the report. Is that not correct then? That we were capping it at 25, or am I missing something in that?
No, that is correct. So,
okay.
Which means that cost was given to us last night.
That is correct. So that would be, just making sure I understood correctly. So that would be the 6.8 million less the 500 or so thousand that we've been allocated. One thing I would like just to mention just quickly is that if we remember back when we were looking at the budget about a few weeks or so ago, is that we were using our surplus for any additional costs that may arise that we are not aware of at this point in time. Potentially such synchronous learning costs and busing costs, all the costs that as we all found out this week, things are changing quite often. So there could be additional costs. So just to remind trustees of that point as well.
Do you need a point of clarification?
And as mentioned last night, we have sufficient reserves to carry this amendment for 1 year. So if there's no vaccine, if COVID exists 2 years, 3 years from now, we have no solution, and we're back up to whatever size of classroom we can accommodate.
That is correct. Sorry, to you, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Thank you.
All right. So, Trustee. Yep.
Chair,
go ahead, Trustee O'Brien.
Add to that to make sure we get all the information that we need. The numbers we did receive also is based on the fact that we have not even surveyed which parents want to keep their children home. So that 6.8 is assuming they're all going to school. So the likelihood of that 6.8 could be significantly less.
Correct.
Thank you.
Superintendent Merrick, you wish to make a point on this matter?
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, just to answer Trustee Murphy's question on the number of classrooms, if you saw, I think it was in Superintendent Loft's spreadsheet yesterday, we would need about 5 additional classrooms. That would be across, I believe it's 4 different schools. If we went to a hard cap of 25. So that would be, portables we'd have to bring onto the site. As you can imagine right now, portables are very difficult to find because most boards are trying to, keep the ones they have and potentially add a few more as well for social distancing. So that would be a challenge, but we could probably add those later in the fall. But we have to find somewhere to accommodate those students in the interim. This also assumes that we would use our libraries and our stages to accommodate these additional classrooms, and also assumes that we can hire the required amount of staff in the next couple of weeks before school starts to be able to house those or to be able to teach those classes. And I'd remind trustees as well that even if the students are learning online or remotely, or in class, they still need a teacher. So the class size ratios are the same. So if a number of students flip to do online or remote learning, we still need the same number of teachers. We may use less spaces within our building because they're learning remotely or online, but the number of teachers doesn't go down.
Thank you, Superintendent Merrick. Trustee Carabella.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to talk about the staggered entry because in this motion it says it's for all. I am absolutely opposed to that for secondary school. We are already doing that with JK and SK. They have, or not sure about SK, but JK absolutely has a staggered entry where they'll have enough time to adapt and learn some new things. I mean, it's going to be a big learning curve, but there is already a staggered entry there. I'm very concerned about the price tag of this. You know, we have to be good stewards, as we've always heard, thinking forward, thinking of the other years. This would bring our reserves to a critically low point. And then the fact last night we had a big discussion as well about the availability of teachers to fulfill what we would need. And a lot of speculation still going on. We don't know how many students are coming back. Maybe we can revisit this whole thing when we get some actual numbers with what's really in front of us, reality, what's really in front of us. And my last point is really it's very close to re-entry to scramble and achieve all this and let our parents have some certainties either way. So I will not be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Carabella. So you don't have any supplementary?
I didn't particularly have a question.
Yeah, it was just a comment. It was just a comment. Yeah.
Maybe if somebody wants to comment about what he means by the staggered, is that for everybody? Is high school? Is it little kids?
Yeah. Yeah, I believe the spirit of the motion is that it would apply to everybody. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions. Thank you.
Trustee Goobert, student trustee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, I would just like to direct my question to Superintendent Lofts. It pertains to the original motion with the 15 to 20 students per class, depending on the size of the classroom. First part is, do we have the funding to accommodate this? And the second part, if not, will we be able to get the funding?
Secretary Daly, do you want to address that, or do we want to go to Superintendent Lofts?
I think he asked Superintendent Lofts, so I'll let him answer that one.
Yeah, but I just thought maybe you wanted to add something to it. Superintendent Lofts, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. The cost, so the 110, 115 million or so, do we have funding for that? No, we do not have any funding for that at all. To put that number in perspective, if we remember a few weeks ago when the ministry announced how much funding was given to the entire sector, so all 72 boards, it was 309 million. So the fact that this is roughly a third of that, we don't have that money, nor do I believe we could get that or receive that money from the ministry. And I'm sorry, the other part of the question was?
No, that was the other part of the question.
Okay, great.
All right, you, student trustee Goobert, do you have a supplementary or a point of clarification?
It's just more of a comment. So basically, if seeing that we cannot secure the appropriate funding to accommodate the 15 to 20 students per class size, it's essentially pointless, to go ahead and vote in favor of that because we don't have the money, correct?
Yeah. All right. So, Trustee Agnew.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. I have two questions, but I'll try to pick the easier of the two. With respect to the staggered start, I'm wondering if staff could speak about what that impact would look like possibly. I'm looking at a staggered start in two different ways. Is yes, it allows more time for teachers to get ready and for us to implement some of these changes, but it also impacts parents and their ability to go back to work or arrange for childcare, things like that. But I'm also curious to understand, what does that impact have actually on curriculum delivery What impact does it have on instructional time? Is there another way that we would make up that time that students are missing? I need more details on this proposed piece for staggered entry, because this has just come up and we haven't had a lot of fulsome discussion on it. And I need to understand what the impact and implications are of a decision like this.
Very good. So I'll ask Secretary Daly to address part of that, and then we can move to whomever else.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I think Trustee Agnew, it really is dependent on what we're trying to achieve through a staggered entry. The original conversations we had as a senior staff, when there was the ability to maybe look at staggered entry over a week, some of the scenarios we talked about was whether we would want students to start. So, for example, on September 8th, on the Tuesday, we would have our primary students come in exclusively. All the teachers in the building would be there, just our primary classes. They would get a sense of the flow and routine of the day and the procedures we want them to follow. We'd have lots of adults in the building to kind of keep an eye on it. Another suggestion was, a suggestion I heard in consultation with another board, was they were looking at splitting up at the elementary level, for example, the entire student population into thirds. Tuesday, a third of students come, Wednesday, a third, Thursday, a third, and then Friday, everyone comes. I'm not sure in the motion whether the intent is to stagger things that way or to literally just delay when students come back. I think the other possible advantage from a planning perspective is if we staggered the start of remote learning, particularly at the elementary level, because once we find out how many students opt out for that, there's some logistics we need to work out. That would probably be helpful on our end, recognizing that those students wouldn't be physically in class anyway. In terms of if it was at secondary, the challenge really would be under our adapted model, we're in a compressed timetable anyway. So we would have to, if we were staggering the secondary entry as well, we'd certainly have to put some thought into how we would be able to adequately make up that time. So those are all those sorts of questions that we need to consider. And I really think the starting point would be, first of all, determining what we hope to achieve through a staggered entry. And then the kind of fallout would flow from there. That probably wasn't very helpful, but those are my thoughts.
So do we want to go to Superintendent Merrick to address the other part of it?
Well, I don't know if that maybe.
Well, maybe satisfactory. Is that satisfactory answer, Trustee Agnew?
You know, it's so respectfully, and it's not your fault, Director Daly. It's probably not satisfactory, and that's not to your detriment. This has just come up right now. We know that the ministry has given this direction, but this has just come up now. You identified a number of different elements that I think have to be considered, again, especially for parents to be okay with this decision. So, you know, to me, that staggered start, while it offers a lot of benefits, there's more planning that has to go into that. So I don't know that, you know, we could necessarily pass this motion saying this is the directive when we don't have any of those other details. What is the impact? If we consider the impact on special needs students, we know that the ministry mandate is that those students be in school every day. Is it going to impact them with the staggered start? What does that look like? The transition piece for spec ed students, you know, the high school piece, we have a condensed model as it is, as you said, that has to be considered if we look at a staggered start. There's a lot of components to just simply saying, let's stagger the start because the ministry has given us the okay to do so. Not saying it's a negative idea, but I think it would be a little bit irresponsible to just mandate that without having all of the details available with that, because there is going to be impacts on students and staff, and teachers and parents. So I'm not comfortable with being able to support that piece right now. And then the other question I have, which is a follow-up to that, is I'd like to understand more about what does it mean when we talk about
organically reallocating existing resources where possible. What does that mean? Like, what are we talking about? I would think that the staff in their planning has taken a look at what are all the available resources right now that we have to reopen these schools. So how do we organically reduce class sizes by reallocating existing resources where possible that hasn't already been taken into consideration? So I need to know what Trustee DeRosa means by that. It's not clear. And what does staff interpret that to mean? Because that could be two very different things. Is that even a feasible ask?
Thank you, Trustee Agnew. Trustee DeRosa, can you please address that? And then if anybody else has, then I'll go to Director Daly. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wow, there's a number of things I'd like to address, but let me start with Trustee Agnew's concern about expressed about the staggered.
Point of privilege, Mr. Chair. I didn't ask Trustee DeRosa to comment on staggered start. Director Daly's already answered that. I asked with respect to the reallocation of existing resources, and that's the clarification I'm looking for.
I will switch the order, Trustee Agnew, but I will not be muzzled.
So hang on.
I didn't ask you to comment on staggered return to school. I asked for your clarification on what you mean in your motion as it pertains to reallocating existing resources.
I'm happy to address that first.
Excuse me, I have a point of privilege. I'm not asking for your comments on staggered start. Superintendent, Director Daly already answered that. I'm asking for your clarification on what you mean in the motion as it pertains to reallocating existing resources.
I've already
Very
said
good,
that
thank
I
you.
would like to get to that,
Trustee DeRosa, can you just stick to the point that she asked? Just answer the question as she put it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The possibility, I'm not questioning whether they have looked at that or not looked at the possibility of reallocating resources just for the purpose of the special situation that we have as called COVID. So the intent of that is to take a look at where resources are allocated now and reconsider and move towards trying to keep teachers in the same class and to try to utilize some of the excess capacity that we have within the school. This is, the point was made in a motion, and I don't know whether it's been looked at already, and maybe it has. But the point that's really being made in a motion is that before we, in the exercise of keeping the classrooms safe within appropriate social distancing guidelines, maybe there's some creative ways we can look at reallocating some of the things that we do today. And that may be staff. We're currently covering planning time for other teachers. And I'm using just that. I don't want to start a discussion, a specific discussion. This is a motion that asks staff to consider as they try to get closer to the appropriate social distancing and class sizes. This is asking staff to consider the possible reallocation, where possible. It's directly in the motion. So it's not tying their hands, it's not a directive. It is just, have you looked at this? And maybe you have. And that's it. So, Mr. Chair, I hope that answers your question. But Mr. Chair, I would like the opportunity to address a lot of the points that are being made in this discussion. Am I gonna have the opportunity to do that, Mr. Chair?
So it's your motion. You get to sum up your motion. I think what we have right now is the friendly amendment that we need to vote on, which has been put forward by Trustee O'Brien. So if there are no other questions to the amendment that has been made by Trustee O'Brien, then we could take it to a vote. But I see that Trustee Guzzo, do you wish to address the friendly amendment?
I need to address the whole thing. I have a point of clarification. I'm sorry, I can't speak at this moment. And it kind of goes back to what Trustee Agnew just said. She actually took my question and I didn't quite hear the answer. So I'm trying to understand, in the interim, staff will continue to the effort of reducing class sizes organically by reallocating existing resources where possible. And I understand, obviously, while continuing to monitor the progress of COVID. I don't understand what we're talking about when we're talking about reallocating existing resources. What is that in reference to? I really just need to know that piece of it, because I don't know what the intent or the spirit of that piece of the motion is, and it's still part of the amendment. All
right. So are we asking Trustee Agnew to clarify that? No.
I'm asking Trustee DeRosa. It's his motion.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I misunderstood.
Yeah, and Trustee O'Brien, in fact, Mr. Chair, Trustee O'Brien has left that on as part of his amendment.
Yes, that's exactly. So that's why I'm getting confused between the two, the friendly amendment and the subsequent part of the motion, which originally we were trying to split up, but we did not. So good point. I will go back to Trustee DeRosa to address that particular question.
I'm going to sum it up and make it in a few words, and I hope it'll address the issue. What that is, the spirit of that statement is that for the period of COVID, which is an extraordinary event, we should approach, or we should use an all-hands-on-deck approach. Not permanently, but for the purpose of dealing with this very, very extraordinary event. So, I'm giving the staff the option to consider an all-hands approach. The details will be up to them to figure out, because, frankly, it's not the board's position to decide on how necessarily to implement. Our role as a trustees is to oversight, is to ask for direction, and put the trust in the hands of the director and the staff to utilize their incredible experience in education, which none of us necessarily around the table can claim to have, and put our trust in their hands to come up with the solutions. I hope that helps.
Trustee Guzzo?
I'm trying to understand, though, what existing resources we're referencing. We have, even with a model of a cap size of 25, we don't have any existing resources that could be reallocated. In fact, the spirit of both the motion means we would have to increase resources. So that's where I'm having difficulty in, like what existing resources specifically, what teachers or EAs or DECEs or ECEs are we talking about that we could, or any teacher within our board, that we could relocate to help reduce size?
Trustee Guzzo, so I think what the spirit of what Trustee DeRosa was saying is that that's not his expertise, and he would leave staff to figure that out. He's just speaking to the spirit of what he's trying to accomplish. The nuts and bolts would go back to staff to figure out and make it work. So in other words, he doesn't have an answer for you.
No, I did have an answer for her.
All right, so go ahead, repeat it.
No, it's what I've said up to now, and which you've summed up very, very eloquently. It is not the board's job to figure out the nuts and bolts of what we are facing. We have a director, we have a staff, we put our confidence in them.
Thank you.
Our job is oversight, set direction, have debate.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
So let's let him finish, Trustee Guzzo. I think he's trying to make a point. Let's let him finish.
This intention to cut and limit debate is only coming one way. So I would ask for the respect of being able to finish a thought and being able to contribute positively to this very, very important decision that we're all taking.
All right. Are you finished now, Trustee DeRosa?
So when we talk about reallocating existing resources, you know, the natural reflex is always to go to human resources. We always automatically think that we want to either cut staff or disrupt staffs. This is not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is take a look at your operation, as well as staff, but also capacity of desks, capacity of location, and so on and so forth. And I'm asking staff to consider the reworking
The boardroom's on mute.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I can't hear anything, and I needed
it.
What?
Well, I don't know why you can't hear anything. I'm speaking to the microphone. Can everybody else hear me?
Who cannot hear?
Now we can. Nobody could hear you. Somebody else mentioned that we couldn't hear anything, so it wasn't just me.
All right, so if we can just wrap it up, thank you.
Well, what are we wrapping up?
No, your comment to the question. I mean, we can't keep.
Been heard.
Yes. So is everybody heard his response relating to reallocating resources?
Yeah, I heard it, but it makes no sense. So I'd love another question.
All right, let's keep personal comments.
Trustee Agnew, you've expressed an opinion. I will respect it, but that was not the question.
All right. So we're going to move on. So,
Mr. Chair, I just have a follow-up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to ask staff if they have existing resources that they could potentially reallocate, if they see that is something, and I know I'm putting them on the spot because this is a new amendment that just showed up today, and we've all had to kind of respond quickly on our feet, particularly staff. Do you see that you have existing resources that could be reallocated based on this motion as presented?
Jack, can you mute, please? So, Secretary Daly, can you address that, please?
I'll try to, and thanks for the question. So, in terms of resources that we know we could access, we do know that in the recent funding announcement, the ministry's allocated about $511,000 to our board that we could use towards staffing. So that would be roughly 5 teachers, if that's the measure we were going to use. In terms of allocating or reallocating existing staff, the only reallocation we would be able to do in any large numbers would be staff that are not assigned to a classroom position. And while we have a number of people in that situation, it certainly wouldn't be enough to cover off the amount of additional classes we would need to add to get to, I guess, where the motion wants us to get to. And there's also some collective agreement things that we would have to work our way through in terms of the timing of reallocating staff. I think the other thing that's maybe worth noting, we would typically at the beginning of the year, once we get a better handle on our actual enrollment, we would typically reorganize some schools at the beginning of the year, depending on class sizes. Wouldn't be system-wide, but Superintendent Kroll might be able to speak to that in a little bit more detail in terms of what we would typically do at elementary.
Go ahead.
And through you, Mr. Chair, just to kind of elaborate on that a little bit further. So we, as I've stated at meetings before, we do have ministry targets that we have to hit for class sizes. So it's assuming for a moment we had all of our students returning, although I know that's not the reality, but that's the numbers that we have right now. We would then look to be adding teachers. Currently we'd be looking to add probably about 5 to 6 teachers to meet our ministry targets, assuming full students returning to school. Obviously this year is very different, but that's a natural function of how we do our staffing, and that is typically what we would be doing through the month of August into September as we typically get new enrollments. I know I'm speaking in very hypotheticals here, but that is how we do our staffing. So we look at the numbers that we have, we look at the ministry targets that we have to hit, and if if the cap size of 25 was the target we'd have to hit, then as Superintendent Merrick and Superintendent Loft shown you, we can staff accordingly. But the 5 or 6 teachers we'd be adding to meet our ministry targets obviously is not the numbers that you've been shown.
So I'm going to Trustee Guzzo or Trustee Murphy. So go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is more of a comment. So we're using anecdotal evidence or our perceived anecdotal evidence to see benefits in some of these things. For example, a staggered opening. To me, logically, it makes sense on day 1 or day 2 of elementary school. There's 800 or 900 students in the playground. Other than that, extending it's really just an anecdotal impression that we have that there is a perceived benefit. Could maybe yes, maybe no. I want to touch back on a comment that was made. This is sending a message to the Minister of Education. My concern is if we're using policy and motions to advocate is problematic because when we put a motion in action, there is significant operational changes that have to take place and resources that are used. And if the overall intention is that we know that this won't fly anyway, but we want to send a message, I would caution trustees that this is absolutely the wrong way to go about it. If we want to advocate, then we should be putting our heads together collaboratively and finding creative ways to get our message to the Minister of Education. We shouldn't be doing it through policy. Thank you.
And somewhat of a summary there, Trustee Murphy. I will now move to, because we're doing an amendment to the amendment, I'm now going to go back to Trustee O'Brien to give his closing comments on his amended version of this particular motion.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank all the trustees for all your excellent comments. You've certainly given me insights into this whole problem. I want to close by just saying that we are people of faith. And what does that mean? Does it always mean that we're always going to make sure there's money in the bank? Are we always called to that? Because Halton Catholic does that all the time. Are we not sometimes, as people of faith, called to do what Mother Teresa does? You minister to the most vulnerable. You give everything you can to them, and you have faith that God will provide everything you need. So, trustees, I'm asking you to have that faith in Mother Teresa right now, and support me in this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Before I take it to a vote, I would like to acknowledge that student trustee Roshdi has now joined the meeting. So he's with us. Student trustee Roshdi, do you need a recap on what it is that we're voting?
Sure, Mr. Chair, that would actually be great. Thank you.
So Trustee DeRosa had an original motion that was put forward August the 12th. That motion received an amendment on his part. Subsequent to that, Trustee O'Brien put a friendly amendment, and if you are on your screen there, He's made the changes in yellow. Those have been removed, and the green is what's been added to this particular motion. So what's before us is a vote to accept, as Trustee O'Brien just stated, his friendly amendment. So I'm ready to take it to a vote unless you need further clarification.
No, Mr. Chair.
I need further clarification, Mr. Chair.
All right, so go ahead, Trustee Agnew.
I hear what you're saying. I'm just trying to look at the motion, and I apologize if I'm the only one that's not able to clearly decipher.
So we're not dealing with the whole motion. We're just dealing with a friendly amendment, because then we have to go back to the original motion that Trustee DeRosa.
I get
All right.
that. So I just want to clarify.
Okay.
I just want to clarify for Trustee O'Brien's amendment is to remove the sections in yellow.
Correct.
And to add the section in green.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You're
and
welcome.
We're voting on that amendment. We're voting on that.
Only the amendment, yes. So we have, it was moved by Trustee O'Brien, seconded by, sorry, I missed it.
Trustee Duarte.
Duarte, yes.
No, that was a closing statement, Mr. Chair.
Yes, it was. So there's no more points. So,
thank you.
So it was moved by Trustee O'Brien, seconded by Trustee Duarte. I can now take it to a vote.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. So, Student Trustee Roshdi, since you got the recap, you get to vote first.
I'm in favor of that, sir.
Thank you. Trustee Kelly.
I am in favor.
Trustee Goobert.
In favor.
Trustee Murphy.
Opposed.
Trustee Agnew.
We're voting on the amendment, correct?
That's correct. That big sigh there.
Can you come back to me?
I can come back to you, surely.
Thank you.
Well, trying to be nice today. Guzzo, Trustee Guzzo.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. So the I'm sorry, I typed in the chat. So does that include all of the pieces in white in addition to the green that we're voting on?
No, we're just voting on the amendment. We're going to go back to the whole motion that Trustee DeRosa put forward. Yeah, so you're just voting on the green.
Just that was my question. So the only motion, the Board of Trustees directs the Director of Education to amend the current plan for returning to school to a cap size of 25 students per class in elementary schools. Hard stop.
No, the motion continues.
I'm going to say opposed. I can't agree with the staggered entry.
So, but Trustee Guzzo, so you do get to vote on this, on the whole motion when we go back to the original amended motion. Okay, you're still opposed?
I don't believe that's correct,
Mr. Chair.
Trustee Chairing Tomasi. If we pass the amended motion and the original motion fails, the amended motion is presented as what is.
No, we're just, so listen, Trustee Guzzo. So if we're just voting on the green, what that means is that we're removing the yellow.
I get it.
We're voting on the green.
Yep. Okay, in favor.
Okay.
I got it, in favor.
All right, so you're in favor.
Mr. Chair, I just want a point of clarification here. I believe it is the items in white and the green. The motion as amended should be.
No, because we're going back to the whole motion afterwards with the change, if the change goes through.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for the vote of confidence. I thought I was running this meeting. So Trustee Guzzo's in favor. Trustee Duarte?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
Opposed.
Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
Trustee DeRosa?
Opposed.
So I get to, it's 3-3, am I correct? Oh, Trustee Agnew, you haven't voted yet.
I will vote in favor of the amendment.
In favor of the amendment. So the amendment passes. All right, so now we go back to Trustee DeRosa's motion, which has now been amended. Motion reads, now we're voting on the whole motion. Trustee O'Brien, go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I have one question for Trustee DeRosa.
Yeah, go ahead.
DeRosa, would you be willing to take out the staggered start in this comprehensive motion?
So, okay, so you want another amendment?
I'd like to know if he would like to amend it himself since.
Oh, okay, all right, but it still is another amendment.
Can I answer his question?
Yes, you can.
Trustee O'Brien, regarding the way that staggered start has been framed, that's the intent and the spirit of the staggered start, is really to leave it up to the staff to determine what that is. Again, the intent is not to give them clear direction that they have to take 3 weeks to do it. The direction is to set a guideline which the government has accepted, and incidentally, the third week of September lines up with the latest directive. But I would leave it completely to Director Daly and his staff to determine how to best deal with that.
Okay, but we're dealing with the motion though, Trustee DeRosa.
Well, you know, it's a little bit like putting the cart before the horse. I oppose to make the amendments that were agreed to in the previous motion. I will not, even if I make this change, no, I will not amend it.
Thank you. So, we have the motion before you. We will be voting on the whole motion.
Mr. Chair,
yes,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
I would like to make another amendment.
So you want to make, this is our third amendment, I believe.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Aren't we only allowed 2 amendments?
That's why I said we're on our third. I was leading to that. Thank you, Trustee Murphy.
I appeal that decision. We are allowed only to make an amendment on the amendment. This is a whole different amendment.
No, so Trustee O'Brien, let's go through it. We have an original motion that was put forward on August the 12th. The mover, who the motion belongs to, made an amendment to that. That's number one.
Okay.
You subsequently made a second amendment, which passed. So we now have an amended motion. There are no more amendments that to be made here.
Mr. Chair, you are right. My apologies.
Does that leave me the opportunity to make an amendment?
No, we can't amend anymore. We just made that statement. Right. So we are now at your motion, the way it reads. It was moved by yourself, Trustee DeRosa. It was seconded by Trustee Murphy. We are now going to take it to a vote.
Is that the original motion or the amended motion?
Well, we've already amended your original motion. Well, hang on. We've amended your amended motion. So what we're voting on is what's before you. So can you show all of that, Rosie, please, from the top? Yeah. Okay. So do we want to reread so you get to speak last to this, Trustee DeRosa, before I take it to a vote. Closing comments. That's the way it is. Go ahead. You get to speak to it.
After the fact.
Pardon me?
After the fact or before the fact?
Right now, you get to finish up on what that motion says as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to start with a point of clarification. If we accept its motion, which essentially changes two things. It increases the cap to 25 and it leaves the ministry out of the equation. If we approve this motion, are we committing to spending $6.8 million to get to 25? Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like that question answered, probably through Director Daly first.
Well, so we're at a vote now, so there's no more questions. So,
okay, so
we are.
What I will do is.
So your commentary can deal with the questions that you raised.
No problem.
Thank you.
My commentary starts with the fact that if we approve this motion as amended, we are committing to spending $6.8 million to get to an average of 25. That doesn't meet the spirit of the original motion, which was to get to 15 to 20 as recommended for safety by medical professionals. So that's the first point. So to get to 25, which is essentially an increase of 5 students on average, we are going to spend $6.8 million, deplete our reserves with no plan to replenish them, and with really don't know, we're spending our savings and we're mortgaging our future. So you will allow my commentaries?
Hang on a second, Trustee DeRosa. We have a point of order. Point of order recognized. What is it?
That is not a question. That he is furthering debate, and I think it's time to vote. That is not a question.
Well, okay.
So just please summarize for us,
I will
DeRosa.
summarize. So this is what I'm trying to do.
But don't raise any questions, right?
I know. I didn't ask that question. I make
No, I says don't raise any more questions.
I will not raise any more questions.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So having said that, if there are problems with essentially, if we don't approve the original motion, we're leaving ourselves we're taking away the opportunity of having that dialogue with the ministry, because what we're saying here is we're going to do this, and we are committing to spending $6.8 million, and we're not guaranteeing, or at least not ensuring, the safety of our children according to the parameters that are out there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, so it's just been brought to my attention that Trustee Guzzo did have her hand up, so I'm going to allow her to speak simply because we missed it here.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair, and really it's just a question to Director Daly. At this point, to do a staggered return, what does that look like for staffing, and where do you see that happening? And would that include high school?
Secretary Daly, go ahead.
I don't think it would have impact necessarily on staffing, and at this point, we really haven't had any in-depth conversations about where it would, if we were going to stagger entry, whether it would be applied to secondary or not. I'm sorry, that's not a very good answer.
Yeah,
we just haven't had the time to contemplate that 2-week staggered entry.
Thank you. Just a follow-up, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Would that information? I know your goal is to get the survey out today. Would that information be included in the survey today? Could it be included today, or is it something that would have to be determined, I guess, within your logistics and within senior staff?
Yeah, I don't think it could be included going out today, and I'm not sure whether staggered entry or not would impact on whether parents are sending their students back face-to-face or online, but I guess it could, but we wouldn't have that information included today, no.
Do you need a point of clarification, Trustee Guzzo, before I take this to a vote?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. This helps in making my decision.
All right, so now we are voting on the motion that's before you. It was moved by Trustee DeRosa, seconded by Trustee Murphy, and there was an amendment that was moved by Trustee O'Brien and seconded by Trustee Dort. So I will start with our student trustee. Student trustee Roshdi, are you in favor or opposed of the motion as it sits or as it reads before you?
I'm opposed, sir.
Student trustee Kelly?
Opposed.
Student trustee Gubert?
In favor.
Trustee Murphy?
Opposed.
Trustee O'Horn Zanot? Oh, sorry. Trustee Agnew? Trustee Agnew? Trustee O'Brien, we can hear you praying, and we appreciate the prayer, though. Keep all of us in it. Trustee Agnew? Right, Trustee Guzzo?
Opposed.
Trustee Guzzo?
Sorry, opposed.
Trustee Dort?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
Opposed.
Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
Trustee DeRosa?
Opposed.
Trustee Agnew?
Sorry, I'm here. I'm so sorry. I just had to step away for a
No
second.
problem, no problem. Go ahead.
I think this is probably a first for me, but honestly, I am not able to, I need more information and I'm going to be abstaining from this.
All right,
motion.
that's fine, that's fine. So there are 4 opposed and 2 in favor. Therefore, we lose the motion. Fails, sorry, we lose it, fails, same thing. Yeah, well, it's not the same thing, you're right. All right, so I think we're getting through this. I can't believe it. All right, so we're finished with the action items.
Okay, Mr. Chair, point of order. Don't we have to go back to the original motion? That was just an amendment.
No, so listen, Trustee O'Brien, we've already gone through this, so we had a motion, he amended his own motion, we passed that, we then moved on to your amendment, which changed the motion, and we just now voted on the motion as it reads. So we don't need to go back to the original motion.
Motion as it reads was the amended motion.
Yes.
Yeah. Excuse me. Just a question. What does that do to the original, not the original, but my amendment to the original motion?
Okay, so Trustee O'Brien, this is the motion because it got amended twice. This is the final motion that we're voting on, which we voted on already, and it failed. All right, so now there are no staff report, or sorry, there's no information, there's no miscellaneous, there's no correspondence. Open question period. We have questions. Somewhere. Director Daly to address one at a time. I will read them and you can address them. All right, so Number one question, will online learning be with children from the same school?
Not necessarily. Students may be allocated to a teacher not from the same school.
Will online learning be regular class sizes or smaller?
That would really depend on how many students opt for online learning.
Is the board looking at the start of the school year, delaying the start of the school year?
We haven't anticipated any staggered entry, no.
If my children are sent home sick, will they be provided with schoolwork for 14 days?
We'll make sure that we ensure that students who have to isolate for that period of time, we'll make sure we keep them caught up on their curriculum.
Will the children be allowed back with a doctor's note before the 14 days?
If the medical practitioner has cleared them to be able to come back to school, then we would have them come back to school.
If in-class learning becomes more detrimental to the child, could a family pull their children out and be provided with some kind of schooling?
Parents would have the opportunity to move from face-to-face to remote learning, and that was part of the presentation from last night.
Hamilton board, I'm not sure which board you're referring to, is allowing re-entry points throughout the semester. Will the board be considering that?
Yes, we will have those multiple re-entry points as well.
I see that the board is hiring many more custodians. Will they be there during the day? Washrooms, doors to be sanitized frequently?
Any additional custodial staff that we'll be hiring, the intent will be to help do that kind of enhanced cleaning that's in our protocols, and washrooms, doors, touch points throughout the building will be sanitized throughout the day.
So question from a second constituent, if my child starts in class at school and I decide I need to switch to online learning, will this be allowed and in a reasonable time frame before second term, a reasonable waiting period, 1 or 2 weeks?
Yeah, and that's what we talked about, those multiple opportunities for parents to make those decisions, multiple points in the year.
If my child starts online learning and we decide we would like to return to in-class learning, will this be allowed and in a reasonable time frame before second term?
Yeah, same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's twice then. Yes, I'm sorry. If I come to find out my child is in a class that is 25 plus students and we no longer feel comfortable with the in-class arrangement, can we switch to online learning in a timely manner?
Yes.
All right, that ends the question period. Vice Chair Dort, you have the floor. Do you have some questions on behalf of your constituents?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have a question here asked by my constituent. In this regard, school times, will they change due to a reduction in students using transportation?
Secretary Daly, did you want to, or do we want to give this to Superintendent Bello?
We don't anticipate changes in bell times, no.
And a subsequent question to that, Mr. Chair, is I don't know if it's answered before. Will the online schooling time be the same as class times? It must have been answered before, but can be answered again.
Secretary Daly?
Whether students are online or face-to-face, they're to be provided with 300 minutes of instructional time.
So the question, Secretary Daly, is will the schooling time be the same as the class time? Yes or no? But not
300 minutes of instructional time is the same. So for example, at the elementary level, instructional time is 300 minutes. It'll be the same for remote learning.
Are you referring to start time?
No, yes, I'm referring to start time. Sorry, Mr. Secretary Daly. I think it's like 8 to 12. 8 to 12.
Yes, we got it. We got it. So he'll give you an answer.
Yeah, that would be the intent, that we would try and mirror that, yes. Now, that being said, students may not be taught by a teacher that's from their own school. So in terms of when the day starts, that we might need a little bit of flexibility there, but I don't think it would be drastic.
Thank you.
I have a question from one of my constituents. They ask, when are the exams going to be held and how?
Okay, through you, Mr. Chair. Under the adapted quadmester model, formal exams will not be written in order to maximize instructional days. So students' final marks will be determined both on their interim work and then a course culminating assignment or activity.
A further question, will schools who depend on the fundraising for uniform sales or swap, will that be accommodated by, or has staff looked into it?
So for used uniform sales or uniform swaps, we do have that in our health and safety protocol. So there are details in the staff plan. So that has been looked at. Yes, it'll still be able to happen.
Very good. So that ends the questions. I thank everybody for being patient. There is no information reports under agenda item number 10. There's no miscellaneous information. There's no correspondence in camera. We don't have to go back there. So I will have a resolution of absentee. We only have Trustee O'Hearn Zarnota, who could not join us today because of her work commitments. So can I have a motion to approve that Trustee O'Hearn Zarnota is absent?
I move.
Moved by Trustee DeRosa, seconded by Trustee O'Brien. Student Trustee Roshdi?
In favor.
Student Trustee Kelly?
In favor.
Student Trustee Gubert?
In favor.
Trustee Murphy?
You're trying to get me back in the classroom, aren't you, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I am. You belong there.
I'm in favor.
Thank you. Trustee Guzzo?
In favor.
Trustee Agnew?
In favor.
Trustee Dort?
In favor.
Trustee Carabella?
In favor.
Trustee O'Brien?
In favor.
Trustee DeRosa?
In favor.
Trustee Intomasi is also in favor, so she has been excused. Agenda item number 16, adjournment and closing prayer. May I have a mover to adjourn?
I move.
Moved by Trustee DeRosa, seconded by
O'Brien.
Trustee O'Brien. All in favor?
In favor.
Everybody's in favor? Or should I say any objection? There's no objections, the motion carries. I will lead us in closing prayer. Please show the sign of our faith in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Bless us. Bless all of us in this meeting today. Guide our steps to be faithful friends and extensions of your love to those that you have seated beside and across from us today. As we bow our heads and lift up our plans to you, we pray that you bless our hearts and minds to know we have done well in your eyes. We pray for your assurance that we are operating within your will. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us on such short notice.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.